Welcome to It Takes Heart. I'm Kate.
And I'm Sam, and we can't wait to share more incredible stories of healthcare professionals making an impact across Australia.
Big part of my sessions and what I'd like to think of myself as a counsellor is that I'm there for all aspects. I'm there to joke about maths with you, but then I'm also there to talk about the heavy stuff of what are we going to do now? Where's life going to take you now after the injury? The universe only ever has 3 answers: yes, not right now, or I have something better in store. And I truly live by that, and I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to be doing.
We care for the land and sea.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of which we meet, who for centuries have shared ancient methods of healing and cared for their communities. We pay our respects to elders past and present.
So today we are diving into the world of occupational rehabilitation with Chantelle Wood. She's the founder and director of Restorative, a boutique rehabilitation consulting practice that is transforming the way we approach work-related injuries and return to work support. Chantelle has nearly a decade of experience delivering outstanding rehab outcomes, and in 2024 was named the Australian Rehabilitation Counsellor of the Year at the Allied Health Awards. What an incredible achievement. We can't wait to learn more about her journey, her philosophy, and the innovative approaches she uses to support recovery and return to work. Welcome to It Takes Heart.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here.
It's really good to have you. As an OT for 5 minutes, I did a placement in Oc Rehab. I still remember it, doing functional capacity evaluations, functional capacity assessment evaluation.
Yes.
But the world of Oc Rehab is a bit of an enigma.
It is.
It's not very well understood. I think when you caught up with Kate, you even mentioned that at the Allied Health Awards, I don't even think anyone knew what the award, what it is that I was getting an award for.
Absolutely, yes.
The extra category. So let's start with, what is Oc Rehab? But then where does the role of rehab counsellor that you feel fit in there as well?
Yes. Well, occupational rehab is such a specialised field. So it's really a space that integrates people back into work or life and their community after going through an injury, illness, or essentially having a disability. So it's really there for the hard times. I listened to a podcast recently, actually, that said that just because some stories are harder to listen to doesn't mean that they shouldn't be heard. And I feel like that really says what occupational rehabilitation is. Health professionals that work in this specialised area, we meet our clients after the fact. We meet them after something's happened. We meet them after the big bad event. So it's so important to hear their stories and then work out a plan with them. In terms of where rehabilitation counsellors fit in, so we are a specialised group of counsellors, and we really are there for integrating them if they can't go back to what they were doing. So if, for instance, a nurse can't return back to nursing and needs to be able to work out a different vocational career direction, rehabilitation counsellors are really there to walk alongside you and help you not only adjust to the injury, but also work out where you're going to go from there.
And how does someone find your service?
Yes.
When you
And I
said
guess
we
who
get you
funds
after
it?
the effect.
Yeah.
Good question. So occupational rehabilitation and rehab counsellors, when you have an injury at work, let's say, or even an injury in life and you have life insurance, you are entitled to access rehabilitation to help you as part of your journey. So normally it's through GPs getting referrals or other health professionals, or through insurance. There's a lot of different aspects in a lot of ways, but it's a space where it's really something that you don't get unless you ask for it.
I was about to say, because I imagine if you went to the GP, probably the first thing is that physical, you need a physio.
Correct.
You need whatever that first strain might be.
Yeah.
Is there enough education even within the healthcare industry to know?
Definitely not. Some beautiful GPs that I know across Australia, they understand the value of rehabilitation counsellors and the difference we can make and Oc Rehab in that space. But a lot of them are really focused on, the immediate, early intervention with physio or some of those other types of treatments. But if it becomes apparent that someone isn't going to plan or the treatment modalities aren't necessarily working, having that adjustment and being able to pivot and look at, okay, well, what else can we focus on for this person? That's where Oc Rehab really does come in. And it's something that people are entitled to access, but a lot of the time employers, don't realise that either. They won't understand they can have someone external who's helping their employee return. So it's really being able to have that education, I think, is a big point.
And how long would someone access your service? Could it be a short period, up to a couple of years, or is...
And is it really the counselling component and yeah, like what's the actual process? How do you unpack and start to finish line?
Yes, it's very much one that, like I mentioned before, that when I meet my clients, it's after that something has happened. So it's really kind of meeting them where they're at that point. And if that's the point where they still want to return to their previous vocation or their career, that is the shared goal that you co-create, and you work out a plan with them as part of their multidisciplinary treating team, which is what Rehab is, part of a big team, to be able to make that happen for that person. However, there's also power in being able to acknowledge if that's not going to happen for that person, and being able to start gently through different interventions, helping them have that realization on their own and lead them towards the idea of a shift and a transition, and working out what that could look like. With some of my clients, that, is a big change for them if they're in their, 40s and 50s and they've only ever been one particular job and they can't do that again. And the treating team have said that, you're really holding space for how painful that is.
That loss of identity.
Absolutely.
And then do you have to do a lot of research around what could be next for them? Like what is,
yes.
what's the vocation now?
Yes, so you would do an assessment with them, and a lot of vocational counselling to really explore what their skills are. So a lot of people have transferable skills that they haven't even thought of, particularly like busy mums working with them, they're able to multitask in such a way that, they might not be able to go back and work in that particular job again, but it doesn't mean that they can't do anything. So it's really empowering that, work gives people so much purpose, and seeing their potential from the beginning is really important, because a lot of people can't see that, particularly if they're experiencing chronic pain.
And then do you connect with the employers as well?
Absolutely, yes.
So I imagine people want to do the right thing, but they don't really know what to do.
Absolutely. So to be able to have, a black book of incredibly supportive employers across Australia has been absolutely incredible, because a lot of employers don't understand. And some employers also don't understand that they can even be a work trial host, so they can host someone who is in their rehab journey, and they can actually be part of that story and help them build that confidence, working supernumerary as well, while they're within a workers' compensation claim or a different type of insurance process. They can be a free resource for them, to be able to add to their team and really make a big difference.
You talked earlier about an Rehab team as a multidisciplinary team. You're a psychologist. What other professionals can sit within that team? Because I think there's this probably a bit of confusion, I think, out there about who can be in Rehab, do you have to have done it? Do you have to have become, you did psychology. I know in OT we could work.
Yes, so
who's
as
eligible?
Well, good question.
Or who forms the team?
Yes, well, good question. So as a rehab counsellor, it's really important to know that you're one cog in that big team. So there, when a client comes to you, they normally have a physio already involved, or an exercise physiologist, or an OT, or a speechy, or a whole group, and you're part of that team. And there's such a respect there, with some beautiful colleagues that I have in the industry, that the work that they do, I couldn't do what I do without them. And they're brilliant work with our shared clients. In terms of who can work in Rehab, it can be any health professional. So if you have a background, you're able to consult on something, you have that knowledge, you have that skill set, you're able to work within that space. And for a lot of people that I've worked with, particularly who are really experienced in the industry, if they don't want to do something so hands-on anymore, to be able to be in a consulting capacity is really empowering for them.
That's really interesting. So that in itself is opening up perhaps a future career for someone who may have sustained an injury.
Absolutely.
This could actually be a really interesting pathway for them.
And even the flexibility, like a lot of the work that Restorative does is in remote communities and rurally. And for a lot of people that are there, for childminding and fitting around school drop-off, it's a really flexible industry as well. So you can really make it essentially tailored to you and the client and what they need, and kind of book that around your calendar, which is an incredible luxury I really am very grateful for every day.
Did you go straight into...
That's what I was going to say. I was like, how did you get here?
Because you were psychology.
Yes.
And then why as well?
Yeah.
Why?
Yes. Well, I was actually lucky enough, and I certainly was thinking about that on the way here, of when I first started going into rehab and really wanting to work in that space. My mentor, who is an incredible dear friend of mine, he's a clinical psychologist in Perth. His name is Dr. Bruce Willett. He was really empowering for me and encouraging to say what difference I could make in that particular area of mental health. So that made a really big difference for me. I think, if I truly think about why becoming a rehab counsellor, I've got to go back to when I was in primary school. So my parents, bless them, enrolled me in like a public speaking group. And in this group, my speech that I chose was all about what I'm going to be when I grow up. So we explored about 10, 15 different types of careers. And I was saying, I could be this, but this would be a negative. I could be this, but that would be a challenge. And, there was doctors in there and firefighters and vets and nurses. And, I wanted to be a weather girl on TV.
Weather girl on TV.
That's very specific.
That's very, Were you pumped to be in this public speaking, or were you, oh my gosh?
I think my parents, they made a massive deal of, how well I would do. And I think having that self-belief, I think made a big difference. So I think I was probably going in there with naive confidence. So I did not win, unfortunately. The boy that won spoke about the life cycle of a tree. So that's okay. But when I was really exploring that.
He must have had some real pizzazz to talk about the life cycle of a tree.
He did. But when I was thinking about it, a big part of being a rehab counsellor is working with people when, you grow up and everyone asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? What are you going to do? But I meet people when they often can't return to what they wanted to be when they grow up, and to hold them in that space that then, okay, well, what's something else we can do? And so oftentimes I'm having the same conversations that I had in that speech that day about exploring the pros and cons of different things for people and really what they want to be when they grow up in that 2.0 for that next chapter for them. So I feel like that's been a big part of my journey of really understanding that and, being there for the next phase.
If you go back to a couple of years back, a lot of people held that one career forever. But I think these new generations that are coming through, there's so many new careers, and the 2.0 and the 3.0
absolutely
would definitely help those conversations now compared to a few years back too.
Absolutely. And I think over the 10 years, I've found people are more open to that. And I think, in OC Rehab, it's really important when you're involved in someone's case to have that respect of, if it's clear medically early on that they can't return, we need to start preparing that person for that. And that's where that vocational counselling and that adjustment to injury counselling really comes in, to really help them have that realisation, and their families as well. If Dad's always been someone who's worked on a roof and now he's not going to be doing that and Dad's at home, the whole dynamic in the family changes as well. So it's an adjustment for everyone.
Did you have to study once you'd completed psych, to move from psych to OC Rehab, or from OT to OC Rehab, is there other study that needs to be done?
Yes, so it's quite specialised. So my background is in psychological counselling, and then I went on to specialise in rehabilitation. So there's different courses you can do and really focus on that area. But I think it really depends if it's an OT that is going to be going into OC Rehab, I think it really depends. There's a lot of on-the-job training you can do as well. So it's really quite accessible. Yep. So it's something that I think a lot of people don't realise is an option to them, but they certainly could do, with the skills they already have.
Yeah.
And even from a rehab counsellor perspective, do they need to come from a health background, or could it be, I'm just thinking about, companies that might have return to work teams sitting within HR or that sort of space?
Good question.
Is that a good?
Yeah, is it just a health qualification?
Good question. So in my experience, I think it's quite varied. Different big employers that Restorative partners with, their return to work coordinators sometimes are health professionals, but sometimes not. They have a HR background, or local government departments we work with, they have more of a HR background too. So I think it really just depends. If your passion is to help people during something hard that's happening for them in that hard chapter, it could certainly be, not necessarily a health professional in that space, if an internal employer.
So let's talk about your award.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Rehab Counsellor of the Year. That's incredible. I love that there's Allied Health Awards.
I want to hear more about the Allied Health Awards. What are they? Where are they? How big were they?
Yes.
When you win, did you get a little trophy?
I did.
What do you get?
Yeah,
what's it? Yeah,
little goodie
why
bag.
did you win? Yeah, tell us about the awards first.
Yes,
because they're not every year.
Sorry, that was a lot of questions.
Yeah, this and this.
I love it. It was such an incredible honour. So the Australian Allied Health Awards are led by the incredible Serena Jones. She is an absolute asset and industry disruptor. I love her. She created the awards to really platform health professionals, because we don't get enough recognition, particularly in the allied health space.
Yeah.
Doctors are, they get their recognition, but we need the allied health
turkey tertiary like profession.
100%. So she created the awards. There was, I think, about 10 or 15 different categories. It was an incredible night. It was held at the Star on the Gold Coast, which was just incredible, so luxe. Everyone wore like gowns and it was just so special.
And was each specialty recognised?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when each category was announced, there was a bit of a spiel about what that profession is, which was incredibly beautiful because you then got to sit there and be like, oh, wow, like, you know, that person does that, or wow, what an incredible, you know, like speeches and hearing, you know, exactly what they do and like, again, just that group understanding and acknowledgement. And everyone that was there was just incredibly beautiful and welcoming and just insightful in terms of their career. Like there was a lot of networking prior as well, which made a big difference. And you can kind of go the night and you already kind of know everyone. Yeah.
How
so
did you do that? How did you do the networking prior?
So that is like a night before. So it's like a cocktail evening for finalists. And it was just so beautiful. Everyone just, met and chatted. And
what a nice idea.
Allied professionals are literally the nicest group.
They
like,
are.
Always friendly, always open.
Yes.
Probably too because they're collaborating with so many different areas.
100%. And from that, you know, I was so lucky to meet, you know, so many other beautiful allied health professionals that now, you know, coming away from the awards, to be able to have, you know, connections like that who you trust and that you know are good at what they do, as we know is so hard to find. It's now led to, you know, so many different collaborations with different cases and, you know, oh, you'd be really good for this one, or like, and just be able to work with them and now on there like every day that you kind of talked about at the awards and it actually comes to fruition is really beautiful.
Why do you think you won? Like, what
good question.
What have you done differently?
Good question. I was thinking about that on the flight over of how to actually answer that. I'd say from the outset, you know, it takes, I think, you know, after the awards and just the influx of referrals has just been incredible, but like it takes 10 years to be an overnight success.
Yes.
You know, I feel that. I really feel that. But I...
Me too.
Yes.
13 and counting.
Yeah.
I feel like the biggest answer I would give to that is that over the 10 years of being a counsellor, I feel like I've always treated my clients like a person before a patient. So someone will walk in for their appointment. You know, they may be worrying about their parking. They may be worrying about an argument they had with their partner that morning. They may be thinking about their child, you know, and what they're dealing with at school. Like, people present in front of you as a holistic human being. You know, an injury is part of their life. And sure, especially if they're in pain, it's a big part of their life. But to be able to hold space for that and how they're presenting at that very moment, I think is really important. And I think also for me, it's really been important to highlight when someone is going through a hard time, being that space for them and not being afraid of negative emotional states. You know, you see in the movies or, you know, on TV shows, you know, when someone's crying, you know, everyone's quick to run and hold them and give them tissues and, you know, really try and make everything feel better. Sometimes people just need to sit in the yuckiness and just be sad and just be grieving. You know,
Which is hard for the person with the tissues.
Absolutely.
To also
but they don't need you to fix them.
Yeah, they just want to be. And I think a big part of, you know, my sessions and what I'd like to think of myself as a counsellor is that I'm there for all aspects. I'm there to joke about maths with you, but then I'm also there to talk about, you know, the heavy stuff of what are we going to do now? Where's life going to take you now after the injury?
And to be clear, that was maths, not maths.
Yes, correct. Married at first sight.
Married at first sight, not mathematics.
Definitely not maths.
In case they come, you get a whole lot of referrals and they're there trying to joke to you about some trigonometry. You're like, no,
let's get back to the feelings.
Yeah.
So can you share with us, like, I'd love to hear a story or really thinking to that person that you really know you've had impact on and, you know, it just must be really challenging to sit with all of those emotions, but so rewarding to help people through it.
Incredibly so. I think there's been 10 years of incredible stories and people, you know, moving through that harder life chapter and being where they are now. A story I think that stuck with me was a number of years ago. For the sake of the podcast, we'll call her Christine.
Sure.
She was in Perth and she was actually involved in a motor vehicle accident. So she sustained a traumatic brain injury from that. And she also sustained orthopedic injuries of different physical injuries to the body. Now, as a result of that, obviously she got referred rehab. And unfortunately, people get referred occupational rehab a lot later in their journey. It's not early on, which is really hard. And that's something that really needs to change.
I was going to say, can that change?
Yeah, the doctors that get it, or the other allied health professionals get it. They understand the importance of that early on.
And how late do you mean?
So in that particular one, it was about 6 months to 9 months later.
okay.
Yeah,
So much
a
time is lost.
massive shift. So when I first met Christine, she was based at like an assisted living facility. So I'm not sure if you know what that is, but that's where they have like 24/7 support. There's nursing staff there. There's carers there. There's, a whole team looking after them. And in meeting her, it's really interesting because like as a rehab counsellor, you take in the whole person and the whole context and then what's going on for this person. And when I met her, we were, sitting in this facility and we were chatting and I just thought, wow, like she presents so well. Like her traumatic brain injury was to the frontal lobe, so that affected some executive functioning, so such as like attention. But her ability to really be present, and she understood a lot what was going on and a lot was going on around her. And a lot of her orthopedic injuries she'd recovered to a significant extent. So I just thought, wow, like she presents so well. So a big part of, OC rehab is actually connecting with family as well and understanding what else is going on for that person in their world. We then had a family meeting and it was really interesting because in meeting her partner, there was a big distinction in the fact that it was encouraged for her to remain in this assisted living facility. It was very much he wanted to have more time with the children. She then wasn't living there. Her time with them was really limited. There was a lot of financial benefit for her being within this facility. And it's really interesting because taking all that whole picture in and connecting with a beautiful nurse who I will always think of being an angel in that particular case, being really transparent with everything that's going on in terms of Christine's life outside of her injury and outside of the facility, it was clear that she presents a lot better and should not be there in that space. So essentially, long story short, I worked with Christine and her beautiful multidisciplinary team and we got her out of the facility. We got her living independently. She was absolutely thriving. We got her returning to work, earning her own income again. Before the accident, she was actually operating machinery. She got back into doing that with a beautiful employer who we're connected with that took a chance on her and knew that she was capable, just like we did and just like I did from that very first meeting. And she was in supervisory roles and just absolutely excelled. And that, to me, the very last time I met with Christine, because I'm only involved for a chapter in someone's life, she said to me that, she could never put into words just how thankful she was. And I said to her that, you thriving is all the thanks that I need and that I'm so glad that we met and I'm so glad you felt safe to share everything going on in your world. Because I have no question, different people that were in her life didn't believe she was capable. I did. And that's what I'm there to do. And the fact that she was thriving and the fact that I could walk away knowing that she was doing so well, that's my why.
That must be really tough when you can see she's capable, but the people in her life don't.
They're not ready for that next change, right? Because
Absolutely.
I imagine they've adjusted already. And I don't think anyone can just imagine the situation. But to change again was obviously too much.
100%. And I think, it's important to look at, someone and the context around them and, what life was like before the injury or the illness or something happened. A lot of family dynamics may have been challenging beforehand, and the role of a support person for someone, I truly believe should be the role of supporting what they want and being right there for them. And oftentimes, it's really important in OC rehab and as a rehab counsellor to acknowledge when that's not happening.
Yeah.
It's that real advocacy piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which isn't easy. I imagine you come up against a lot of roadblocks.
Absolutely. And a lot of doctors, a lot of specialists, a lot of employers, all different aspects of someone's life, are really hesitant to change. And I think I'd like to think of myself as someone who's there to make change. I'm not just there to just not do anything with that person. We're actually going to go somewhere. And again, we work that out together. We co-create that together.
And there's such huge... Oh, sorry.
No, go.
I was just going to say this is such a positive impact for everyone, economically, for them emotionally. Like, there's so many wins here
Yeah.
to get people to that place.
Yeah, it's such a privilege, and I'm so grateful every day that I'm doing what I'm doing. Like it's just an incredible honour to be there with someone.
That resistance from employers, you know, with capacity, and you've talked a few times about a few amazing employers. What would you say to those employers that are a little bit hesitant to return people to work, and how do you bring them on the journey and turn them into your black book of fabulous, fabulous employers? Because I think there'd be such a lack of awareness and understanding.
Absolutely. I would say, good question, actually really good question. I would say that...
Thank you. I've literally just thought of that one myself, and I did have 2 coffees today, so strap in.
I would say the role of the employer is so critical. You know, they can really make or break, I think, someone's return, particularly if they have a disability or an injury that's permanent, that they are adjusting themselves to that and then what they can bring to a workplace. I think it's important for employers to know, firstly, you know, Safe Work Australia have indicated that, you know, the percentages of people that even have psychological injuries now that I work a lot in has gone up 97% in the 10 years.
Wow.
97%. So being open to someone returning to work that is going through psychological stress, not just physical injuries, is really important too, and being that creative safe space for them. Another part I would say is, you know, being really proactive, that there is such an untouched workforce there that have so many skills and that may have an injury that does recover in 6 months or 3 months, that they are someone that can really add a lot of value to your business, and that even if they do actually have an employee that has had an injury at work, for instance, understanding the importance of early intervention, so getting occupational rehabilitation involved ASAP, you know, connecting them with a rehab counsellor, connecting them with people that are going to be really on board with support. Because remembering, when someone has an injury or an illness or something happens, they go to the doctor, and you go to the doctor for a doctor's note, right? You go in and you walk in and you say what's negative and what's not going well for that person. But the importance of rehab is to really acknowledge, wow, like, you know, this is actually going really well, or this has gone great at home and this has gone great at work. And that really does change the whole framework of a medical case conference and a doctor's visit, because people are then understanding, oh wow, actually I did quite well this month, or I achieved this month. And employers obviously aren't going to be part of that. You know, people's health is so private and so confidential, so being able to have a health professional who's there guiding that person through it, but also supporting a return to work, is really critical as well, so that they can just remain the supportive employer that they need to be.
What about with like the new laws that have come in around psychological safety in the workplace? Has that led to an increase in work for you in terms of mental health presentations? So not just your traumatic motor vehicle accident, or are we seeing that yet?
Good question. I think there's certainly more awareness of mental health, you know, particularly from social media, which is wonderful. And I think people are understanding, you know, what workplace stress is and the impact it can have, you know, and you know, the joke on Instagram is, you know, you get your Sunday sads that come around, but if that's happening for you every week and that you're not wanting to go into that job and you're dreading Monday morning coming around, things can be different. So I feel like there has been an increase in awareness, which obviously then results in, you know, increase in people needing to have time off. We've also had a very tumultuous last 5 years in Australia and the world, so people's resilience is a lot lower. So I think there's certainly been, as I said, evidence to show there's been an increase in psychological injuries, because people...
Does those injuries find their way though to
Yes, sometimes, yes. I think it depends. Like I said, I think if you have a supportive employer, or you know, an educated doctor, or a whole team around that person who understands the value of they're entitled to have support involved from the day that the injury happens, that makes a massive difference. Because it's definitely led to an increase, which again is really hard, because people's psychological health is so pivotal, and that changes who they are as a whole person.
Is there work you think that could be done around that mental health crisis?
I think that there's a lot of work that can be done. I think certainly being able to assist in counsellors being under Medicare and being able to be subsidised in addition to psychologists would make a massive difference.
And so just to clarify, so if you need to see a psychologist, there's Medicare there to support you.
Correct.
But if you chose to see a counsellor, there isn't?
There is not. So it's not the same level of accessibility for people. And the wait time is so astronomical that it's so hard and people are suffering. People are absolutely suffering. Whereas Medicare, it depends. Like some private health funds, they do fund counselling and they understand the value of that. I think it just really depends. Also, employers typically offer like an employee assistance program and that can be through their counselling team that they have. You can also choose to be able to have your own counsellor added as your employee assistant. So there's a lot there that can be done that people just don't know what they can change.
What's the difference between a counsellor and a psychologist?
Good question.
I reckon a lot of people.
Yes.
And when you go, well,
question.
one's getting Medicare, one's not.
Yes. Good question. And again, I certainly, value incredibly highly the beautiful psychologists and clinical psychologists that I work with. I think it's very different. When you picture a psychologist like in the movies where, you sit across from them in a consulting room and they're going to provide that really evidence-based treatment, which is incredible. Counsellors can also do that, and rehab counsellors can also be there on a practical sense. So being there in the workplace with you in a meeting that you're struggling with or you're dreading to go to with your HR or with your employer that, is really stressing you out. Rehab counsellors can be there for that day-to-day as well. Rehab counsellors are tertiary educated, so there's certainly that background and that specialisation there too. And the training in cognitive behaviour therapy, I'm trained in that, and so are all the other rehab counsellors that I know and I work with and other counsellors too. So I think it's a really blurred line, but I think it's really important for people to know that there's other mental health services they can access that's not just a psychologist.
So it might be really that education of our doctors and our
Absolutely.
Our healthcare professionals who are in that referring seat to have bigger understanding maybe in some cases.
I think it's quite similar.
Because, the wait times are huge.
Absolutely, and it's quite similar in the physical therapy space that, some beautiful physios I work with, they certainly have incredible value, same as an exercise physiologist,
totally,
different.
actually.
So again, they just add different types of skill sets that make a difference for someone, and someone needs holistic support. Like I work in partnership with beautiful psychologists, like working on someone's case, and that they're going to work on particular things with that person, and I'm going to work on something different. And you just come together as a big team.
So tell us about your business.
Yes.
When did you start it and why?
Yes, good
You're
question.
clearly very passionate.
Thank you.
And what are you doing differently?
Thank you so much. I started Restorative in 2021 and thinking about my why to get people through harder life chapters and work out who is me after injury. I feel like there's one story that I wanted to share that kind of really resonates with me and kind of before I started Restorative way back when, a few years ago, a number of years ago now, as to what kind of led me to think I need to help more people, like I'm just not doing enough. So I was working obviously as a rehab counsellor and I was connected with an employer and we were supporting someone in their return to work. So for the sake of the story, we'll call her Bonnie. Now, Bonnie and I had met a number of times before that. We were going to meet at her workplace and kind of plan that transition, how we're going to get her really supported and really held and feeling really good about coming back to work. So I met her downstairs, as I always do with my clients, because they deserve to be met exactly where they're at. I am right there with them from the second they walk in that door. I am by their side. So we met outside, then we went up in the elevator because for her fatigue, it wasn't an option to go up the stairs. We went up in the elevator together, and I remember in the mirrored part of the elevator glass that she was fixing her headscarf. So Bonnie had breast cancer, and so she was living with cancer, and she was returning to work, which is another big area of rehab of people that have, illnesses that they still need to work. They still have a mortgage. They still have to look after their families. That you still got to do it. Life doesn't stop. Correct. So we walked inside, made her a herbal tea as she couldn't be drinking coffee at the time. And we were chatting and a lot of our session that day focused on swiping on her phone different types of wigs and what we're going to be choosing and what's going to make her feel the most comfortable and the most like her before cancer happened and how she was going to return to work in that retail role and be as comfortable as possible. And it was just so beautiful, and just seeing how clear she was and that what she wanted to choose and how she felt really empowered and feeling good. And, we had the specialist appointment coming up, so we're going to kind of put the plan to them and say what we're going to be doing. And then she left. And then it's interesting, in OC Rehab and particularly as a rehab counsellor, you see the whole picture of the whole situation, which sometimes is a blessing. but sometimes it's a curse. So when Bonnie left, the supervisor was meant to be joining us, which did not happen. And the supervisor pulls me aside when I went back upstairs and says to me that, really, Chantelle, like, should Bonnie be coming back to work? Like, she's going to make people feel uncomfortable. Yeah. In terms of her health condition and what she was going through. The supervisor then says to me, of our session today and, when I spoke about what we talked about, whether that was actually a good use of my time was the question I was asked, whether that was a good use of my time. And you best believe I sat there and I reminded them that as a wholehearted hand on my heart, yes, that was an incredibly good use of my time. And I educated them about the fact of people returning to work in all different aspects of their health and their role as a supportive employer to be that. And I share that story because it's such a privilege to be there and to be that shield oftentimes for my clients with a difficult employer. And we then had the specialist appointment as planned days later. And, just incredibly so, she just managed to come back to work and be in a beautiful supervisory role because I made sure whatever we needed on that certificate we got. And she trusted me and I took that seriously. And that, if that was in a different department to where that supervisor was, go figure. Who would have predicted that would have happened? Who would have thought? Who would have advised? So for me, it's an incredible privilege to be part of that. And I think that, is really what I'd like to think is one of the many thousands of moments in the 10 years that led to me creating Restorative in 2021 that I just thought I need to help more people, like I need to have more of a reach. And now to be, running a business that's across Australia with my beautiful team, which I have to mention.
How big's your team and what skill sets?
Good question. So we've got like OTs, lots of different allied health. We've got exercise physiologists. We've got social workers who are very close to my heart. I love social workers. And really just quite holistically being able to look after different people in all different phases of where they're at because, if I can't help you, I can certainly connect you with someone, that can in my team or outside of Restorative. It's been, an incredible honour with that. But I think, what we do differently is really meet that person where they're at and really support them with where they're going to be going because you're only involved, and I keep stressing this, for a short time, and that's as it should be. Sometimes you see people, years on end be going to treatment and they're still in that chapter and they're still stuck in it. But I think it's really important early on that, and I say this to my clients, that, one day I'm going to be finished and you're going to know that it feels right, and I'm going to be used to you coming in and telling me about the hard things and I might not know in that moment, but every day I'm working for that day for you to be excelling and you to be thriving. And, I have so many beautiful cards on my desk next to my trophy, but the cards are at the front. The cards are at the front that really to me say, what the clients mean.
How do you look after yourself? Because I imagine, they talk about compassion fatigue and in many roles and vocations, but
especially being that shield.
And you are taking on so much of everyone else because we can see how passionate you are and how much you love it.
Yes.
But how do you also make sure that
Good question. I would say, again, it's cliche, but it's so true. I would say self-care, but not just in the sense of a bubble bath or disconnecting from social media. Like, I've been incredibly blessed to be able to, go on a women's business retreat last year with Lorraine Murphy. She's incredible. And Claire Obeid. That for me was my moment of my self-care and that reconnection and business planning and being able to have that space. So I would say in terms of, there is compassion fatigue that a lot of health professionals go through because you are there and you are that, as we said, the shield, you're their protection. But I think it's really important to go back to your why. And I was just saying to one of my beautiful OTs that I know in the industry in Perth the other day that it's important to do the clients and the cases and the work that really aligns with you. I'm really particular, like with particular clients, if I see that it's not going to align or I'm not exactly what they need a different type of counsellor or they need, someone who has a different type of personality, that's okay. Like that's you being a good health professional of recognising, I don't think I'm going to be able to help this person and actually taking that step back, and I think that's a really big, important decision you need to make. So also I think the cliche goes, but it's true, saying no is the most powerful magnetic word you can do. So I've been so lucky to build Restorative to be so aligned.
You talked about the businesses being hosts of, for people to come back to work.
Yes.
Are you looking for businesses?
Oh,
or how do you go about that?
always.
Is that
how
something
do you
that people
fill the black book?
Yeah,
of these
good
businesses?
question.
Can businesses out there go,
They
we'd love
hear
to
this
do
episode.
that?
Absolutely,
How do we get
yes,
involved?
100%. Absolutely. And again, because Restorative look after, clients across Australia and particularly in rural areas as well, there's certainly not enough education there on that being available too. So if there's any employers that are open to, a placement with someone, that is supernumerary, who can be an incredible asset to your team, I'm always happy to chat and to see how it could work. We have so many incredibly skilled clients, workers that would be incredible in different teams and just need to be given a chance. But people see, the injury before they see the person. So I'm really working hard to reframe that. But yeah, I think it just depends. Again, in the industry for so long, you really get familiar with the really incredibly supportive employers, some of the big supermarkets, all those types of things. But I think it really makes a big difference when it's like a mum and dad team as well. And they can have someone there who is skilled and oftentimes, to be honest, they lead to a job because they realise this person that's been there for 12 weeks is so
It's
good.
incredible.
Yeah, and that they want to keep them.
Yeah.
And that what an incredible accomplishment for that person as well.
You said about, that you often capture people a couple of months down the line, but what advice would you give to someone who's just sustained a life-changing injury?
Yeah.
What do you wish you could say to them up front?
Good question. I was thinking, it's so powerful, I think, and just to be able to say to them exactly that I understand how much life has changed for you in this moment, and that right now it doesn't feel like life's going to get any better, but I'm here to tell you that it's temporary. But if I may, I would also like you to visualize something, okay? I want you to picture yourself on the edge of a forest. And you're walking towards the forest and there's like a beautiful cool breeze on your face and you feel safe and you're just walking ahead. And you see in the distance there's this beautiful fire that's burning and it's warm and you can feel it on your skin and you can hear people talking and laughing and everyone's happy. And you keep walking through this forest and you get to the edge of where the campsite is and you see, the beautiful fire. And you see in this campsite, there's all these past versions of you. So there's you there from childhood. There's you there in high school. There's you there with your first job. There's you there in all those important milestones in your life. And that everyone's staying there and they're so happy to see you. And you come over and you walk in and everyone's giving you a hug and everyone's just so excited and everyone's just telling you and so excited to hear what's happened. And you share, that this is right now, something bad's happened, like something bad, like this is not what I planned. And they're saying to you, it's okay, look, you got through this hard thing, but remember this happened, we got through this. And there's all these different versions of you that are cheering you on. And you stay there for a while and you chat with them and you feel like you're held by all these past versions of you. And then the sun's coming up and you start to walk away from the forest and you can hear people are still chatting and people are still happy. And then on the edge of the forest, I'm standing there and I'm waiting for you. And I'm like, let's go. Let's plan what we're going to do now. I'm right here alongside you. And we walk away and we actually make that plan happen so that we can remind you of all the things that the past versions of you said, that it's far more powerful than any advice I'm ever going to give you as your therapist.
I literally could cry.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people listening will get so much just from that. And I think that speaks volumes of the sort of counselling that you provide and the sort of care that you give to every single person that you spend time with, to be honest,
100%.
or treat. What do you think as an industry needs to be done?
Good question.
That's a big question. In one element, is it education? Where do we
does
need to
the
start?
rehab industry need?
Oh, good question. I feel like I'm one part of that wheel, and I'm sure every health professional would have a different perspective of what needs to change. As a rehab counsellor, I would say that, again, I'm very lucky to have a beautiful, not just a black book of employers, but a black book of incredible treatment providers, incredible physios that I've worked with over the years, incredible OTs, people that we work together and collaborate. I think there needs to be that collaboration, the multidisciplinary team meetings, acknowledging everyone's role role in everyone's lane and how we're all working towards the same goal. In terms of what needs to change, I feel like there needs to be more early intervention. You know, when someone has something that happens at work, you know, being able to talk to a specialised counsellor, like a rehab counsellor, who can actually help plan of how they're going to return. What are you going to say in that workplace meeting when you go back, when you're meeting with HR and you're panicking? What are you going to do in that moment? Being able to have that extra support would be really good, and there to be more knowledge about that. And again, I think GPs are really understanding the value of that already, and I've certainly seen that shift over the years. But like what we said before, with the rise of psychological injuries, it's really important to bring that to the forefront and people to have that knowledge that sometimes workplace stress is not just workplace stress. Sometimes there's a lot more going on for someone, and you know, there's a lot of measures that we, you know, can assess as counsellors and can work with you and can really make that determination of whether you're just experiencing workplace stress or whether there is, you know, a lot more going on in terms of depression or anxiety, and then how we're going to shift that, because work needs to be something that you feel good about. Like what I said before, if you're having a Sunday SADS every week, we can change that. It doesn't need to be that hard.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I think it seems so niche, however, so widespread and needed. You know, I think about people I know have had injuries who certainly haven't had this support, and I'm just questioning why, and how do we not know?
Absolutely.
Why have they just left out trying to navigate
Absolutely.
what to do next?
Absolutely.
And then all the family are gathering around going, well, we don't really know what to do either.
And the families are so critical in that. You know, the amount of times, you know, a lot of restorative receives actually is from, you know, beautiful family members, and that they say, you know, my mum's had an injury, or, you know, dad hasn't been at work now for 6 months. Like, what do we do? And particularly if they're not covered under workers' compensation, and this is just an injury that happens in life, you know, like a slip, trip or a fall, there needs to be someone that works with them. And, you know, that's why their primary health provider, their GP, is really critical. But oftentimes everyone thinks about the physical, right? So we'll quickly go see a physio and let's get you better. But if getting you better is not going to be the end result, like you're not going to completely recover, we need to have a contingency for that. So I agree. It's such a space where you meet people, as I said, after the big bad thing, and that I think a lot of that is spent, you know, stabilising them and trying to get them to move forward.
That's a interesting point, though. People can find you not just through like a work of a claim.
Absolutely,
So it might be that someone's actually just reaches out to your business directly.
Absolutely.
You don't need to be referred, so to speak.
Correct. So Restorative are quite boutique, that we work with a lot of local governments and insurers, and, you know, some of the big employers in Australia, and we look after their team members, you know, when something bad happens at work. But a lot of, well, certainly what I specialise in is in that motor vehicle accident space as well. But in addition to that, yes, if something generally happens in life and you're not covered under life insurance and you're not able to have any form of income coming in, but you need to do some type of work and you have no idea what that would be, that's where I come in and that's where I help you. And we work that out together.
I love that. So we're going to make a donation, CMR making a donation with every episode. Where can we make a donation for you today?
Good question. I would love to share a little story, if I may,
Please.
as to where and as to why. So I would love a donation to go to Solaris Cancer Care. So they are a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful charity that's based in WA. And the story is this, that I was in Solaris, I was visiting there a couple of years ago now, and they provide incredible holistic services for people that are going through cancer treatments. So whether that be massages or even just a cup of tea and a biscuit. They provide acupuncture, all different types of modalities, counselling. They do it all there. For really just something that's a nice moment away from cancer and something that's actually just really special being in there. And when I was in there a couple of years ago, there was a lady that came in. And she was standing at the front desk, and I'll never forget it. And she was obviously undergoing cancer treatment, and she was wearing, well, she would have been wearing a cold cap. So I'm not sure if you're aware of what that is, which is a blessing. The cold cap is what people wear when they want to keep their hair when you're going through chemotherapy. obviously the cold cap had worked in some parts, but in some parts, you know, she had significant hair loss, and you could see that her hair was, you know, quite long before all this happened. And she was staying there, and she was, you know, really excited because in that tin of the biscuits they had that week the really fancy Arnott's ones. You know, they had the shortbread, they had the Monte Carlo.
The Delta creams.
Yeah, they had all the good
we
stuff.
We have those this week.
Absolutely. And she was excited for that because last week, you know, it wasn't an option because, again, Solaris are just led by donations as a charity to have that space. And she was standing there and she wanted to book in for a massage, and she wanted to kind of time it that it was going to be around her treatment because the last thing she wanted to do was to come into the hospital again. And she was staying there and she was working it out, and the beautiful, beautiful people that work there, they're absolute angels on earth. And the lady was helping her work out when she could get in, and because there's such a wait time, it was going to be, you know, months away in terms of her appointment. And she was quite disappointed. I remember like hearing her intonation change in her voice, and she was a bit sad that it was going to be a bit further away, but her treatment was going to be going on for a while. So she was, you know, she was still going to book. And I'm just getting a bit emotional when she was giving her name to the receptionist that was standing there, and she's like, oh, you know, it's Diana, you know, just like the princess. And my heart, like in that moment, that I just thought like there needs to be like more spaces and places just like this that is holding someone through the really hard moments and just has a cuppa, and just to be there with that person. It's not all medicalised, you know, it's just that moment. So if there's anything, yes, anyone can take from this episode, don't listen to me, just donate to Solaris, because donate it for people just like Diana, just like the princess, to give them that moment and that space. Yeah.
Chantelle, you are incredible. Yeah. Honestly, like you are just, you know, they say you never work a day if you do what you love.
Oh,
and
100%.
You are so passionate about an area that is just so unknown. And I think, you know, even as an OT here at Rehab, it always just seemed like a bit of consulting on the side. But when you actually hear your stories, there will be so many people that will hear this and think, oh, that is just such an incredible profession to work in.
It
and
is.
How lucky your patients are to work with you and clients. I think it's amazing.
I'm the lucky one. It's a privilege to be there, and that it's an incredible honour. And, you know, the saying goes, and I truly believe it, the universe only ever has 3 answers for you. This was in Samantha Will's book, which is my absolute, I love her. The universe only ever has 3 answers. Yes, not right now, or I have something better in store. And I truly live by that, and I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to be doing. And I am absolutely, it's an incredible privilege to be there with my patients for them. And yeah, what an honour. And thank you for today. I've absolutely loved it. It's been so nice to platform it.
Thank you.
So lucky to have you in Brisbane.
Yeah, yes. Shout out to Restorative, based in Perth.
Based in Perth, but across Australia.
Yeah. So absolutely. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into It Takes Heart. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend.
And if you know someone with a great story in healthcare, get in touch. Follow us on socials for all the behind the scenes fun, and we'll see you next time.